Why did the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh get their hands dirty in Japan? How did the Sussexes make their joint return to television? Will Prince Harry be allowed back as a half-in, half-out working royal? And does the latest bombshell email spell the end for the House of York? Hello and welcome to another jam-packed episode of Palace Confidential. My name is Jo Elvin and I have quite the panel joining me today. It's the Daily Mail's diary editor Richard Eden, one of your faves I know, and the historian and author Andrew Lownie, who has recently written the book entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York, which will come in very handy later on in this show. Now, to all of you watching at home, please do like and subscribe to the Daily Mail Royals channel so you never miss exciting content like this. We've got a lot of shows in the works for you, and trust me, you don't want to miss out. So do hit that subscribe button, and we recently interviewed Andrew about his book entitled, so if you want to watch that video in full, it will play directly after this. I know a lot of you have watched it already, but just in case you missed it. And if that simply isn't enough to satiate your thirst for all things royal, we have another free newsletter that you can sign up to by using your camera to scan the QR on your screen now, or by clicking the link in the description below. If you love this channel, I know you will love that newsletter. Right, it's time to get to my panel. Now, we're going to kick things off with an update on what Prince William and Princess Catherine have been up to this week. Now, Richard, they returned to a rather poignant location on Tuesday, didn't they?
Yeah, this was a joint engagement by the Prince and Princess of Wales back in Southport, which was the scene of the most appalling crime last year, where 3 little girls were murdered, and it was an attempted massacre of far more at a Taylor Swift themed holiday club where they were doing a dance class. William and Catherine have taken a close interest in this. They visited last October and they went back to visit the parents of the murdered girls and to visit the schools. They've been making some efforts to commemorate the loss of their friends. So I think overall it was very sensitive, but it seems that the families very much appreciated their visit.
Indeed, and I think it's important for those families to know that we haven't forgotten what happened to those little girls. I think, Andrew, the royal family, aren't they? They're in a unique position to be able to bring comfort to communities in the wake of such tragedies, aren't they?
Absolutely, and there's a long history of this. I mean, going back to Aberfan, where indeed they continue to go and see the place and to visit some of the families. And we've seen it with Manchester Arena tragedy, and indeed with even the tsunami in 2004. I mean, Philip would go out and see some of the victims' families.
Thank you. Well, on the other side of the world, the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh were on a visit to Japan, where they got their hands dirty by planting an oak sapling in the garden of the Akasaka State Guest House. Now, Richard, this was for a very special reason, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, because this sapling came from a seed which was from a tree planted by Queen Elizabeth during her state visit in 1975. So that was, a sign of continuity, and obviously, Japan's a great ally. We have a great relationship with them, our fellow island nation, and it looks like they've had fun on this trip.
Excellent. And what else did they get up to?
They've been all sorts, quite a few sort of symbolic Japanese things. I liked the fact they met Hello Kitty.
I'm quite jealous.
That popular character, which is Japanese. They attended a sumo wrestling match, which they seemed to thoroughly enjoy. And if I'm not mistaken, Sophie was asking for some binoculars or something to get a closer look.
You are cheeky.
But that looked like fun. And anyway, they've been doing lots of more serious engagements as well, connected with education, sport and different activities, but it seems to have been a great success.
I do hope they stocked up on peach-flavoured Kit Kats.
Yes.
There's Japan and Kit Kats, it's a match made in heaven.
Yeah, they love Kit Kats.
And different flavours.
Isn't it? It's all to do with Kit Kat sounds like good luck.
Really?
In Japanese, I think.
Yep, that
makes sense. I
think
that's where it comes from. So they love those.
I'm sure that must be literally true. Andrew, how far back does the British royal family's relationship with the Imperial House of Japan go?
Well, it goes back to 1869 when Prince Alfred, Queen Victoria's second son, was sent out there. And as Richard's mentioned, I mean, there have been state visits since then. They've come to coronations, they've come for funerals. And indeed, we've just had the recent emperor here, he and his wife educated at Oxford. When I wrote my book on Mountbatten, there was this huge tour that Mountbatten did with the future Edward VIII there. So there's a long tradition of reciprocal travel. And as Richard said, they're an island nation, very important strategically and also clearly economically.
Big question though is, did Prince Edward follow the example of the Prince Albert that you mentioned from the 19th century and have a tattoo? Because that's what he did of a dragon on his arm.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, that would be
a good question to
quite
ask.
rock and roll for Edward though, wouldn't it be?
Well, maybe him and Sophie, they could have had matching tattoos.
I like that idea. Well, to celebrate the British royal family's ties to Japan and other countries in East and Southeast Asia, we've compiled one of our world famous montages, so stick around for that at the end of this episode. And if you are from that region of the world, let us know which country you're watching from in the comments below. I'm also looking for somewhere to stay in Seoul next year, just saying. Now, it may not be as groundbreaking as their Oprah interview, but we have seen Prince Harry and Meghan return to our TV screens this week as part of an ABC documentary to mark 70 years of Disneyland called The Happiest Story on Earth, 70 Years of Disneyland. I thought Disneyland would have been a bit older than that, actually. But Richard, did Harry say anything that we didn't know already?
Not really, to be honest. I thought he looked he was very subdued in this interview,
At the happiest place on earth?
Yeah.
What?
He looked like sort of, oh, do I have to do this? It was sort of grumpy Harry. But it was very interesting because when we saw pictures of Harry and Meghan at Disneyland with the children, we would say, oh, it's sweet, they're doing what other parents do. But inevitably it was a freebie.
How do you know?
Well, no, I presume it was part of this, that in return they've taken part in this promotion.
Right.
And I thought it was very interesting because we do know about their links to Disney. I mean, who can forget when they went to the premiere, I think it was the premiere of a live-action version of The Lion King in London.
Beyonce, yeah.
And this was when they were still working members of the royal family. And Harry was actually caught hawking for work for Meghan. He literally said to the boss of Disney, he said, oh, my wife can do voiceovers.
She's available, yeah.
And she later did do a voiceover for a wildlife programme. Admittedly, they gave the money from that to charity. But I think given that their relationship with Netflix is always sort of said to be a bit shaky, good for them to keep their options open in terms of friendly relations with other huge companies like Paramount or in this case, Disney.
But also, I just want to pick you, it's true, isn't it? If you can't smile at Disneyland, I don't know where you can. Do you know what I mean?
I've only been to Disneyland in Paris and it was very miserable weather, so I was a bit grumpy, I must admit. But
honestly,
I need to go to the one in California.
It is the happiest place on earth. Some eyebrows raised mildly, Andrew, when the couple's name strap appeared as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Do you think this goes against their agreement not to use their titles for commercial purposes? Do we know?
Yes, I think it's unfortunate. I mean, they're still using their titles when, as you say, they're not really working members of the royal family. But of course, the Duchess of York has been doing this for 30 years. So,
we'll be getting onto that in a minute. Trust me.
In many ways, I think she's been an inspiration to Meghan.
Okay, interesting. Well, now it's time for your comments, and you all seem to love our coverage of President Donald Trump's state visit last week. So thank you very much for watching. Here's a comment from Virginia Marshall who said, Rebecca, spectacular job on descriptions of the banquet. I quite agree. I'd seen the photos and was awestruck, but your descriptions made it even more impressive and come to life. You're so lucky to be able to view this firsthand. Well, she's lucky. They sort of get to see the opulent splendour of the table and then get ushered out the back for some warm sandwiches, but so lucky. Now, sticking with the topic of the state visit, Snoodle asked us this question. Can the royal family refuse to host someone for a state visit? Do they have no choice? It's a great question, Richard. Do you know?
Well, I think officially you'd have to say no, because we're a constitutional monarchy and the monarch sort of has to do really what he or she is asked by the elected Prime Minister. But you never know, do you? It depends on that relationship. They could certainly express their reservations.
Or could they just express, oh, there's just simply no room in the diary. We're just so booked solid
no,
for the next
I'm afraid
25 years.
They have to make room for that. In the case of Queen Elizabeth, as our colleague Robert Hardman wrote in his book, she was very reluctant to meet Nicolae Ceausescu and his wife, that she had to host for a state visit. Now, he was president of Romania, appalling man, mass murderer, and she expressed her reservations, but still went ahead with it.
Why were we
because she
cuddling
was
up to
asked
him? What did we need from Romania?
I think it was trade. Perhaps they were hoping that sort of that would help open up the Eastern Bloc. But either way, there was a very amusing anecdote where the Queen was in the gardens of Buckingham Palace, and Mr. and Mrs. Ceausescu were having a walk, and the Queen apparently hid behind a bush because she didn't want to talk to them.
Good for her.
So I think she was that reluctant. But she did do it. She also entertained Robert Mugabe and others that she probably, really didn't want to do. But that is the role of a constitutional monarch.
Indeed, I hope that answers your question. Carla Tambrino also wrote to us and said, first time posting, was I the only one looking for our friends at Palace Confidential during the live feeds of the state visit? You're all such a joy to watch every week. Great job. That's very kind, but no, I won't be allowed anywhere near a state visit anytime soon. You, Richard?
Who knows?
Who knows? Oh, I like your optimism. He's optimistic. Me not so much. Well, you may well have caught a glimpse of our Rebecca, though, at the state visit, and some of you also mentioned that you saw her at the Duchess of Kent's funeral. She's everywhere, so do keep an eye out for her and say hi if you see her. She likes that. Now, this week, Daily Mail columnist Jan Moyer also gave us the rundown on her thoughts on Meghan Markle's As Ever brand. And after listening to her commentary, Margaret WB commented, the only thing, from what I can see, that is authentically Meghan is her calligraphy label. The jar shape can be bought as it is already out there. I have no idea why she spent so much time on designing the jar when it's been designed for years. Okay, as always, thank you for all your comments and do keep them coming. But let's get back to my panel now, because this next story is obviously the big one. In a world exclusive, the Mail on Sunday obtained an email sent from Sarah Ferguson to convicted sex offender Jeffery Epstein that has exposed her lies, unfortunately. You'll probably remember that the Duchess of York came under pressure in March of 2011 over the links that she and ex-husband Prince Andrew had to Epstein. In particular, there were questions about the £15,000 bailout that Epstein gave her, and eventually Fergie publicly disowned him and pledged she would never have anything to do with him again. Just weeks after telling journalists that accepting Epstein's money was a gigantic error of judgment, she sent a gushing email to the paedophile in April 2011, calling him a steadfast, generous and supreme friend. I mean, Andrew, I could barely get my breath when I read all this the other day. This is your bread and butter. What was your reaction to this email?
Well, I was jaw-dropping. Mark Cookham rang me on Saturday with this story, and I gave him some quotes. I mean, some of this material was in my book and was taken out by lawyers. So I'm really pleased that the story has come out, and it's a great mystery where this email has come from. But in fact, she was staying at Epstein's properties for many years after this. So in some ways, what she says in public, I've learnt, you have to question. It differs very much from what happens in private.
And I was intrigued because you've written about your doubts that Sarah received only £15,000 from Epstein in the Daily Mail this week. Because I did think for a multimillionaire and that gushing email, 15 grand seems like a pittance to be sort of grovelling about. What do you think it's estimated at?
Well, I had two sources who both said 2 million. One worked for Epstein, one was in the royal household. In fact, someone, an old girlfriend of Andrew, has actually just confirmed it as well. So you're absolutely right. Neither of them would have bothered with anything less. I was told that it was 150,000 on that particular occasion. So the story, I understand, also was set up by Sarah Ferguson, that it was 15,000. But it's not clear what that money was for, whether it was to pay the tuition fees for Johnny O'Sullivan, or it was to pay for staff wages she hadn't paid. You know, and in some ways she needs to come clean. What was the money that for? How much did she receive? Did she repay it? And actually she says thank you for the money for her family. So was money paid to the daughters as well?
So what do you mean the tuition fees for Johnny O'Sullivan? What's that?
Well, one of her lines was that Johnny O'Sullivan wanted to retrain, this is her assistant, and he wanted to do some course, and she very generously was going to fund the course.
Oh, right.
And that's
with someone else's money.
Yeah, and that's why the money was needed. Exactly.
Yeah, I can be generous with everybody else's money if you want. So obviously there's been a backlash, and it only seems to be growing. What have we seen happen against Fergie so far, Richard?
Yeah, I was really shocked and disappointed when I read that, because you know me, I've always been quite sympathetic to Sarah. There's things I admire about her and Andrew, the fact that they've remained close friends, the fact that they've raised two, in my opinion, very admirable daughters.
And that only seems to get more impressive the more we know about the York's dealings.
So, you know, I was very disappointed to read this, but since this revelation on Sunday, she's been dropped like a stone by a string of charities. I think at the latest count it's 8, because Sarah has been involved with many good organisations, some of them that have dropped her. For example, the Teenage Cancer Trust, she's been involved with for about 30 years, so they won't have done so in a hurry. But it's just so damaging, you know, to say something publicly like, you know, I disown this sex offender, I want nothing to do with him. And then a few weeks later to be sucking up to him is revolting.
I'd love to know your thoughts, both of you, on, there's been a few claims in the last few days. A reported friend of Sarah's has been vocal in the press saying, oh, you know, she just did what she had to do to mitigate threats from Epstein about defamation or about, you know, going public with things that would upset the royal family. What's the truth there? Do we know?
So I should say that I have been told this before, that after that interview she gave where she disowned Epstein, he gave very sinister threats to, particularly to her PR people. He was saying, I'm going to destroy you, destroy the family, that type of thing. So she would have had good reason to be alarmed. But I'm sorry, that's no excuse. You know, go to the police. If you genuinely think your life's at risk, go to the police, or, you know, deal with it. Alert the royal family and their security people.
I sort of like, I think it begs credulity, this idea that he could sue for defamation when he was already a convicted paedophile. I mean, his reputation was toast.
He'd already been jailed.
Apparently, according to Lizzie, he wasn't in jail. He was like house arrest or something like that.
Yes, but he'd already served his sentence for these sex offences. So I'm sorry, I'm not very sympathetic with her over that.
Yes, I mean, I know he was very upset because he'd been very generous to her and he felt she was very ungrateful. And, you know, there was some pressure put on her, but I agree with Richard. I mean, clearly she shouldn't have been so effusive. I mean, you know, there are double standards here. And I think it's going to be very, you know, it's not just the charities that have left now. She's had her book, her children's book has been postponed. You know, I think it will be interesting to see, you know, whether some of the people she's been doing business for as a brand ambassador, whether they will feel she's now pretty toxic.
And what do you think about the excuse that we read in those emails to Epstein, that she did a public mea culpa on the advice that this was the way to save her author career?
Well, I'm sure she was advised that, and that's what any PR person would have advised. But they would have only said, do this because you believe it. You know, that they presumably hoped that she wasn't just putting on an act. And that's what's so damaging, because if she says something in the future, she apologised about something else, I'm sorry, but I won't believe her. Because how can you believe someone who lies like that in public?
It's tawdry, isn't it?
It
does raise questions about how genuinely she is interested in some of these children charities, if she's prepared to countenance, you know, being like that to someone like Epstein.
Well, that's my huge struggle with the whole affair. Having run a children's cancer charity, I feel quite strongly about that. But Andrew, you wrote that the wider royal family will be appalled, but it's because it's more reputational damage. But what do we think King Charles might actually do, and what should he do?
Well, I feel very sorry for King Charles because I think his options are pretty limited. I mean, I think he can't get rid of him from Royal Lodge unless Andrew is prepared to go or isn't able to afford to stay there.
Even in the wake of this?
Well, Andrew has a rock-solid lease, and as long as he is maintaining the property, I mean, that's the big question, whether he will continue to do so, but he can stay there. I mean, the optics certainly don't look good, but that doesn't sort of worry Andrew. I mean, for Andrew, this is the last bit of status that he's got as a member of the royal family. And, you know, Richard Kay talks today about whether you can remove titles, but he then just reverts to being a prince. I do think it's extraordinary he remains a Knight of the Garter, and that has been removed in the past from Hirohito. And I do think it's extraordinary he's still a Vice Admiral in the Navy. So I think that the public feels something needs to be done. I mean, there's always this worry that it's easier to keep your enemies, you know, close, and you know, clearly there is a danger of creating enemies here. there could be a situation, let's say, where Sarah Ferguson talks to a sort of Andrew Morton figure and some sort of book comes out which is embarrassing to the whole of the royal family.
That's another piece, a bit of Richard Kay's piece today, isn't it? They're saying that, and that could make Harry's book look tame in comparison.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sort of running implicit threat all the way through. I found when I researched my book entitled, that she was, hinting that she might do these things. That happened with the divorce. It happened later on when she was writing her books, and I suspect it helped her get some of the payments from the Queen. So, I mean, I don't think she's adverse to hinting at this.
It's interesting as well because with the Royal Lodge situation, there's been some theorising that actually the way that Andrew is able to maintain the financial upkeep on that is because of Fergie's income streams. So where are we with that in the wake of her reputation?
Yeah, I mean, that is one way that they could be forced out of Royal Lodge, because as part of their lease, they agree to maintain it. And as we know, it's not some little lodge, it is a palace. It's one of the royal family's biggest houses. So if they can't afford to maintain it, that could be a way of forcing them out. But it's difficult.
But you've got to remember, that the palace did look at his sources of income and claimed that he was able to sustain himself there. He has trust funds. He's made money over the years through Pitch at the Palace and other operations when he was a trade envoy. I mean, there are talks of millions of pounds of commissions paid to him. So even with the high running costs of Royal Lodge, I think he has money. And I'm not sure that Fergie has actually been subsidising him.
Right, yeah.
Though, of course, she could. I mean, I think the rental flat of the two houses in Belgravia would pretty much cover the running costs. But then someone said that the house was empty and they occasionally used it for parties, and that was it. So, again, if they're not renting out those properties, are they really that desperate for money?
Must be nice to have a spare couple of flats to rent, have a party every now and again. Must be nice, mustn't it? But seriously though, Richard, will this be the end of the House of York?
I hope not, in the sense of their daughters, because they are blameless in all this. They've never put a foot wrong, so they don't deserve to be punished for the sins of their fathers. So I hope that they will have a role in the future. But I personally think it should be the end of Duchess of York and her role in public life. I don't see how it can't be, for reasons I've mentioned.
What do you think, Andrew?
Well, I mean, never say never with Sarah Ferguson. She does keep popping back. I mean,
Very true.
She is a sort of Houdini of the royal family. And we thought it would be the end of her in 2010 when it had the News of the World sting for selling access to Andrew. But I agree with Richard, this is of a slightly different order, and I think this is sort of her ninth life has gone. But, she may well go off to China or indeed back to the States. We may get, something that will make us all very sympathetic towards her. And with the passage of time, she'll pop back.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you think about, in recent times, we've seen her sort of invited back into the fold at Christmas gatherings and all that sort of thing. Will we at least see perhaps the Yorks won't be invited to Christmas or to family funerals or weddings?
Well, you might remember, so last Christmas, Andrew and Fergie didn't go, and that was after those allegations about the alleged Chinese spy.
It just never ends, does it?
So they stayed away last Christmas, and I think it's inconceivable that they'll be invited to join the royal family, walking to and from church. I think if they are invited for Christmas, it would be on the basis that they've got to stay out of the photographers' cameras.
Yeah.
But it's very tricky, isn't it? And it's this age-old problem that it's a family as well as an institution. So, what does Charles want to do to his brother?
Well, we must mention, of course, that a spokesman for Sarah Ferguson has said that the Duchess spoke of her regret about her association with Epstein many years ago, and as they've always been, her first thoughts are with his victims. The spokesman claims that Sarah sent this email to assuage Epstein and his threats to sue her. Additionally, Prince Andrew has always categorically denied having any sexual contact with Virginia Giuffre. Well, sticking with the topic of controversial dukes, we heard briefings over the weekend from sources apparently close to Harry that his recent meeting with King Charles signalled a thawing of their relationship and the acceptance of his family back into the royal fold. Some even claimed that the Duke of Sussex would be able to take some of the load off his brother William, who's received criticism for carrying out a lower number of engagements than his father. On Monday, though, our Rebecca English, who's currently on a rather well-deserved holiday, broke news from a royal insider that all was not as it seemed. Now, so Richard, what's gone on there?
Well, essentially, Buckingham Palace has reiterated their position, which is the same as it was under Queen Elizabeth, when she made clear that Harry and Meghan wouldn't be allowed to combine money-making with carrying out royal duties.
Yeah.
The reason the Palace has felt the need to do this again is because the briefing has become more and more intense after Harry's recent visit to Britain. He gave an interview to the Guardian newspaper, which is an anti-monarchist newspaper. He gave a briefing talking about how he thought he'd be able to return to Britain, hopefully with Meghan and the children. He's hoped to come back to Britain more. And friends of his have been briefing that he would like to sort of undertake some more duties, that he might appear at an engagement, some sort of charity engagement perhaps, with his father. But it sounds like the briefing on the part of Harry and Meghan has just gone too far for the palace.
It's interesting though, because I just can't help harking back to Harry's quotes in the Oprah interview about what a dreadful experience being part of the royal family is. So explain this to me. They want to make money. That's what they're doing in America. But I think Harry does certainly miss royal life. I think he was very well suited to that. Is what he's been brought up with, and he's made absolutely clear on the record that he wants to have the chance to carry out more charity work, more engagements in Britain. And his big sticking point was his security, which interestingly, he was given security during the visit to Britain when he carried out his first engagement with Wellchild at their awards ceremony, and I think he didn't have it later. So that's still a sticking point, but he clearly hopes that can be resolved. I've been dying to ask you this, Richard. Your article this week is centred around your refusal to be part of the establishment plot to undermine the Prince and Princess of Wales amid all this talk of Harry and Meghan returning to the UK. What's going on? Tell us about this.
Let's be clear, it is a plot. It's a plot by Harry and Meghan and their supporters and friends. They want them to have a bigger role in public life in Britain again. They're working hard to make that happen. And they have managed to secure, the meeting from the King. There are those close to King Charles who think that it's something that should be, sort of sorted, should be mended so relations are improved, and that Harry does feel able to have a closer relationship again with the royal family. But all of this is undermining William and Catherine because it's being allowed to happen without any kind of act of contrition or repentance from Harry and Meghan. I mean, in his interview with The Guardian, Harry made clear, he literally declared, "My conscience is clear, I'm not sorry for anything I've said or done." So imagine how hurtful that is to people such as Catherine, who were I would say, insulted and been abused by things that he and Meghan have said.
So on the inevitable day that we don't wish to happen prematurely, but on the inevitable day that William is king, even if they get to that sort of like that place and back in the fold, at the moment that's going to be a really bad relationship, isn't it?
Well, this is why this plot's so dangerous, because it's aimed to get Harry and Meghan kind of back before William becomes king. So then by the time he is on the throne, he'd be in a position where that would then make him look very sort of petty or vindictive if he kind of banished his brother. And by that point, perhaps Harry and Meghan's children might be at school in Britain. They might be kind of sort of established here. So that starts to make things very difficult. So anything that is done, in my opinion, should only be done with the agreement of William and Catherine.
What do you think? I'm just trying to think, has there ever been any other half-in, half-out royals, Andrew?
Well, I mean, you could argue that Fergie has been half in, half out. I mean, she's, there she is in the royal box at Wimbledon while she's, promoting things on a shopping channel. So,
yeah.
in some ways, this had been going on for a long time. where she was pursuing her business interests. Indeed, Andrew was pursuing his own business interests as a special trade envoy. And people turned a blind eye.
So why is that allowed, but not?
Well, I think
the
double
Sussexes model,
double
right.
standards here. You know, one could argue that Sarah was no longer married to Andrew, but they were living together. They're always doing things together, invited things together. So it does seem to me it's not a very consistent position.
And I would say a crucial difference is that for all their faults and Fergie's faults, she was very loyal to the royal family in the sense
True.
of she never said a bad word about any of them. Like, yes, she gave an interview, or more than one, to Oprah Winfrey, for example, but she would always be gushingly polite, and she would always be so complimentary about her ex-husband. It's very different to the attitudes we've seen from Harry and Meghan.
Agreed.
And in light of that, do you think Harry does owe an apology to the royal family or to William? Or?
Yeah, oh yes, I mean, he said some very hurtful things, you know, about his stepmother and about Catherine. So, absolutely, and I think people do expect him to make some sort of apology, because otherwise, you know, a lot will be left hanging in the air. How genuine the apology is, I mean, is another matter. And I think, so, you know, the sense of bitterness I sense between the two brothers is going to take a long time to heal. But in many ways, William has to perhaps think of the bigger picture.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to something positive now. Richard, you revealed some brilliant news for William and his Earthshot Prize charity.
Yeah, this was interesting because there has been criticism of Prince William lately for being you know, how can I say, a bit lazy or work shy. It was Tina Brown, the royal biographer, was saying that King Charles wasn't happy that Prince William wasn't doing enough. Well, this week accounts were published for the Earthshot Prize, which is the charity he established to reward schemes that were trying to do something positive for the environment. And these accounts revealed that they raised £24 million last year, just in 1 year. And that's in total, since it's been going, it's raised well over 60 million. And if you put last year's money together with the money they raised for the Royal Foundation, which goes to various causes, it's about £36 million. So it shows that, I would say it emphasises William's point that he thinks concentrate on sort of fewer causes and really go for it, and you can make a difference, rather than be spread very thin, just being patron of charities that you're not able to be very sort of closely involved with.
Interesting. Well, hear that? It's time for our Unsung Royal Hero of the Week. And this week we have a nomination from Richard, the world's oldest living woman, 116-year-old Ethel Caterham. Richard, did you nominate Ethel just because she made the King blush?
Well, it was a wonderful meeting she had with the King. And I thought it was quite an achievement at the age of 116 to be able to embarrass the King there. But she talked about how all the girls used to fancy him when he was younger, which at that point she was still a very elderly lady.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
But they had quite an amusing exchange by all accounts. But she definitely deserves a nomination of the week.
And she's had actually quite a remarkable life, hasn't she?
It's an amazing life. I mean, I think she's one of the last subjects of Edward VII. I mean, she was learning to still driving at the age of 97. She went out to India in 1927. I mean, it's extraordinary. I mean, you know, you really feel you're touching history with someone like that.
Yeah, it's incredible. Somebody who, I mean, so what year was she born? Let's do our maths. Like...
Is it 1909, I think, isn't it?
So yeah, if you think about how many things weren't even invented, like it's a completely different world that she's seeing now. It's crazy.
Well, I mean, you know, have memories of the First World War when we assume that, you know, that was all, you know, completely in history.
Yeah, not many of us can say we've lived through 6 monarchs. I mean, this is only my second.
And, how many prime ministers?
Yeah, let's not go there. Probably too many. Well, as promised, we've compiled pictures of our royal family on their visits to Asia over the years. I hope you enjoy. That's all from us at Palace Confidential. A huge thank you to my panel, Richard Eden and Andrew Lownie, for all their insights, and to you for watching, of course. If you want to hear more from Andrew, we recently interviewed him about his latest book, Entitled, and that video will play straight after this. Remember to subscribe to the Daily Mail Royals channel so you never miss an episode, and to sign up to our free Palace Confidential newsletter by scanning the QR code on screen now with your phone camera or by clicking the link in the description below. And we'll see you next week. Bye for now.